Good evening, everybody. Keith Engel here for college football huddle on TGI Sports Talk. I should say TGI Sports Talk's college football huddle. Great to have you with us. Still the sports huddle as well. Welcome, everybody, here on Northeastern Sports. Let's talk sports. If you see us on Sideline Sports at some point, give us a check out. You're always welcome to watch this and all my other shows on TGI Sports Talk. Good news, I think we have solved the streaming problem that we've had since we moved to our new location. If we have any problems going forward, then I have no further answers. We're going to be joined tonight by we're going to get into some conversation about a lot of things, and there'll be a little more than football tonight. We're going to recap some of the Wake Forest college baseball season with our favorite, one of the show favorites, Lary Sorensen will be with us tonight to kind of talk about Wake Forest baseball, how they finished at the College World Series. We'll talk about some of the players that got drafted and a couple of players that played locally here with the Amsterdam Hawks in the summer collegiate league here in upstate New York. And we'll also talk about all the news in the ACC. Lots happening in college football here the last few weeks, guys. Colorado going back to the Big 12 next year, starting to see ripples in the water again. Florida State making it clear today they do not see themselves staying in the ACC much longer. It's just a matter of when and how they exit. Rumors about them and Clemson both in the Big 10. Also, talk about Washington and Oregon in the Big 10. Washington and Oregon, Arizona State with the Big 12. This is an ongoing, never-ending cycle. So we're happy everybody's with us tonight. Good evening, Dave Guyette. Good to have you with us tonight here on the College Sports Huddle. Guys, as I mentioned, if I didn't mention, Lary Sorensen will join us about 7:30-ish. He'll pop in. We'll talk some stuff. I just talked about it. Oh, God. Lots going on. We're going to get into this instability again. Pac-12 this close to imploding. The ACC could be right behind them. Could they form a super conference, coast to coast, northwest to southeast? After some of the comments the FSU people made today, don't be surprised if that happens. If Florida State's got till February, August 15th, my birthday. I'll be 63. Happy birthday to me. August 15th, they have to notify the ACC of their plans to leave if they want to join a different conference next year. Would they have the chutzpah to leave without an offer from somewhere else? There's rumors about the Big Ten. There were rumors about the SEC. Nothing solid. They have no offers, but they're tired of carrying the water for the ACC. They mentioned themselves in Clemson, and they said they meant no disrespect to the rest of the schools, but it's unfair that they carry the weight of being the media darlings here in the ACC. And by the way, they're stuck. That's another place that Pac-12 and the ACC have in common. The ACC is stuck in a long-term not good, not top-of-the-line TV package. Pac-12 is about to probably sign on to one. They don't have a TV package. I mean, do they have schools that anybody wants to watch? What's going to happen? Remember, USC and UCLA are gone next year. Washington and Oregon seem to be looking for an exit strategy. Is that the Big 12? Is that the Big 10? Or is it the ACC and the Pac-12 forming together? I don't see the ACC doing that if Oregon and Washington jump to say the Big Ten or the Big 12. I don't think that's gonna be attractive to the ACC without Oregon and Washington in the Northwest. By the way, the Big Ten's also talked about adding 2 more teams, so 4 teams potentially. They didn't give any kind of timeline. They said they've only had discussions, but they admitted to having the discussions. Washington, Oregon would be the first 2 in. If they decided to go to 4 more, Stanford and Cal would be the other 2. Pac-12 is teetering. The ACC won't be far behind it. Hello, Rick. How are you, buddy? Larry will be on about 7:30, just so you know. Rick is at the Mohawks championship game and have little ability to hear. Sorry to hear that, but good luck to the Mohawks. Let's see. Rick, you and I had talked about, and I'll talk to Larry about these 2 players from Wake Forest. Merrick Houston, the shortstop. He's a freshman at Wake Forest. We'll talk to him a little bit about him and also the pitcher, Carson Catugno, also from Wake Forest. I was trying to look at their numbers from this past year. Merrick Houston batted only .220. He did have 4 home runs, 29 RBIs. And let's see, how did Mr. Catugno fare? He did not actually pitch for the team this year, does not look like. So we'll try to get some input from Larry about both those guys. If you're hearing me, Rick, not sure. Interested if those guys, either one of those guys, are in the lineup tonight. Carson's an Amsterdam guy? I did not know that. Is he related to Art Catugno? Doesn't look like he got to pitch with Wake last year, Rick, but we'll get into that with Larry. We're going to get a lot with Larry. He was at the media days last week with the ACC media days. We'll see what kind of takeaways he had from that. We'll talk to him about the rumors surrounding Clemson and Florida State. And we'll ask him, I want to know, how does he feel about some of the comments that were made today by the people at Florida State, the school president, or trustees, I should say. The trustees met today, made it clear afterwards, led by FSU President Rick McCullough. I believe that FSU will have to, at some point, consider very seriously leaving the ACC unless there were radical change to revenue distribution. Kenny Gifford says it all the time. It's about the money. We're right here. Hang on a second. I want to check something out. Yeah, we're on the right one. I feel like I'm jumping again, and if I'm jumping now with the feed or with the speed I have right now, we had some serious issues with StreamYard or something else. StreamYard could be the next target for Keith. There's a problem. Anyway, radical changes to their revenue distribution have to be addressed. McCullough said that Florida State will fall behind its peers in the Big Ten and SEC by as much as $30 million per year by the end of those leagues' current media deals. And that frustrates him because we are one of the best media valued teams in the United States. We, along with Clemson and others, help carry the value of the media rights in the ACC. No offense to my colleagues, that's just the numbers. So I wonder how the Wake Forest and the Dukes feel about that. Duke in football, not Duke in basketball, of course. And this could start another whole round of realignment, guys. Colorado leaving to go back to the Big 12 was just the first ripple of the next wave. And the Pac-12, as I said a couple times, is teetering. You know what's interesting in all this? We feared all this, all these schools. What's very interesting, of all the group of 5 schools that have made New Year's Day appearances, all of them, pretty much all of them, not Tulane from last year yet, but TCU, Cincinnati, UCF, trying to think, there's a couple others. Oh boy, a couple of the others are slipping my mind, but there's like 5 or 6, maybe 7 that have made New Year's Day appearances. They are now in Power 5 conferences. How did Boise State get left behind in all this? Boise State had a great run. They aren't playing as great as they were now, but they're still a pretty good TV attraction. And in fact, in week 1, they're going to play Washington, and they're the 3:30 game for, I want to say, ABC. That's a pretty good time slot. And Boise State attracts viewers, whether it's the blue field or the interesting way they play football. They're still a competitive football team, not like they were from, 2004 to 2012, whatever. They had a great run. But it's interesting, they've never, ever really seriously gotten considered for a Power 5 slot. Now, as I looked into this, it appears to be one thing, and it's hard, it's such a shock in the world of college athletics, that it's academics. They rank like 330th, roughly, of all college schools across the country in academics. They have trouble overcoming their junior college roots, if you will, even if it was 60 years ago. So I'm interested. Any of you guys watching tonight, you should pop in. Have some questions for Lary Sorensen here at the bottom of the hour. We'll talk all of this news. Lots of stuff going on. And we'll talk about some of the teams that have a chance to win the title as well. Maybe we'll do that in the last half hour. I want to get into some news before we do that. We'll talk more about ESPN's got a ranking, 17 teams they've got listed with a chance to win. Let's see if they've got them all, if these teams have a realistic path, and if they've left anybody out. We'll also obviously talk more and more about this Colorado going to back to the Big 12, I should say. Got a lot to talk about with Lary Sorensen, so we may go a little longer with him. Who knows? So we talked about the Big Ten Eyes expansion. Here's the thing, too. It would appear, and I find this interesting, it would appear that neither the Big Ten nor the SEC, they're kind of slow playing this next round of realignment because they don't want to be the ones to pull the trigger on the grenade on the Pac-12 or the ACC. So it may take somebody else jumping first. Arizona schools, let's say, or at least Arizona looks pretty solid going to the Big 12. They don't want to take Washington, Oregon, and possibly Stanford and Cal before the Pac-12 is already bleeding out. Sorry for the harsh description there. And the ACC probably as well. I mean, the SEC would love to probably poach. Well, they'd love to have Clemson. We know that. I'm really curious. And again, Larry and I both have been on the same page about realignment. We're not crazy about it. We'll get Jim Beringer on next week to talk about all of this as well. I'll do my best to get him on next week. Jim's been taking a little break as well. If the Pac-12 and the ACC can save themselves by potentially teaming up and having a northwest to southeast, coast to coast, basically, but a little bit different territorial wise. Well, not so much. You'd go from you'd still go from Southern California to Boston as well. So you go from Southern California to Boston and the Northwest in Seattle all the way to Miami. That might save these conferences, or well, I shouldn't say. It'll save one of them. And maybe thwart the plans of the Big Ten and the SEC to further expand into those areas. You know, the other thing too is how does this affect how does all of this affect the expanded playoff in 2 years? 12 teams, remember 6-6 basically. The 6 highest ranked conference winners and the 6 next best rated teams would get at-large bids. Well, that was based off the premise that you had 5 power conferences. By the time we get there, we might only have 3. There could be 4. There could be 3. There could be 2 for all we know. Well, that changed. They're locked into year 1, 6-6. But do they change later on? Do the Big Ten and the SEC wield the stick that says, you know, hey, look at all the teams we got here. We want 2 guaranteed berths. That's not the way it needs to work. I've been a proponent of this expanded playoff for a long time. Not to see it bastardized, so it's again, I know if John DeLon were here with me, he would tell me that it's, you know, basically a participation trophy tournament. That's baloney. If you won your conference tournament to get there, you earned your way there. Just like the basketball tournament. But I guarantee if we end up with two super conferences, or even 3, well, they're going to demand more automatic bids. And where's Notre Dame going to be left in all this? Big 12 talking about potentially going to 20 teams, and one of them still isn't Notre Dame? Interesting. Sorry about that, Rick. I didn't take down your comment. As I said, we'll have Lary Sorensen joining us to talk about some of these topics, as well as some Wake Forest baseball. So bear with us in the beginning of this as we listen. I want to. There's just so much. Where does Notre Dame fall in this? So much to talk about. Oh God. Now with Northwestern, by the way, on top of all the hazing suits that are now coming up, former football player Ramon Diaz has filed a lawsuit against the school Wednesday, alleging he was hazed and mistreated in the program largely because of his race. So now race enters this whole issue. He was an offensive lineman there from 2005, 2008. This is an ugly enough situation without introducing race into this equation as well. Just a bad situation. Speaking of the Pac-12 and their TV deal, right now it appears that they've been presented with, presented with several options by their commissioner, who's just really, he's really in over his head, it would appear. George Kaliakov, I believe is how you say his name. He's in the entertainment business for a long time. He seems to be, and he's going to be the last commissioner of the big Pac-12, most likely. Now, several options have been presented, but Apple and a streaming deal has emerged as a likely leader at this point, which would be largely subscription-based. How's that going to work for these schools? It's brought some clarity to a lengthy process, which, again, the commissioner has not put a new TV deal in place, which has ultimately played a role in Colorado's decision to take off for the Big 12. Monetary and exposure questions still loom. And outside pressure from the Big 12 remains. The Big 12 putting pressure on them because they've entered a pretty good TV deal here, considering the situation they were in with Oklahoma and Texas leaving and no real signature school in the Big 12. Still isn't one. But it's deep. And how's this? Again, we talk about the money that's going to these schools, but how's it going to affect the viewers? I'm going to have to pay to watch the Pac-12? Now, if you're a fan of the Pac-12, you live on the West Coast, you're an alumni, you're probably going to pay Apple to watch it. Now, I happen to be an Apple subscriber, so it's not a big deal. But if I didn't subscribe to Apple already, I don't know how likely I would be to subscribe to watch the Pac-12, especially once UCLA and USC is gone. The Big 12's new TV deal begins in 2025, and those schools will see an increase to an average of $31.7 million. That's long been the barometer, what the Pac-12 was looking to pull in. But how are you going to do that without USC, without UCLA? They brought, and Colorado gone, not a big deal, really, even when it comes to basketball. But they brought nobody in. They danced around with San Diego State. San Diego State doesn't know what they're doing. They told the Mountain West they were leaving. Now they told the Mountain West they may not be leaving. Now suddenly San Diego State and SMU are really the leaders in the clubhouse to be brought in to at least be the 10th team, 8th, 9th, and 10th teams once Colorado's gone. And hang on, I got a message from Lary Sorensen here. Hang on one second, guys. I got to send Larry another invite. So, some of the schools want to stick to 10. Oregon and Washington want to stick to 10 to be able to, have, first of all, share less of the pie with anybody else, but also have an easier path to a 12-team playoff with less schools to compete against, right? So, hang on, guys. I've got to get into Facebook. So, I know we got a comment up there. Bear with me while I bring up Lary Sorensen's information here because I got to get him an invite. Something's wrong. Something's going on, by the way, with I got to get with StreamYard because my emails are not getting through to people with invites. I know Dan Harris has had this problem. I know some other people who have had this problem. So if you have, you guys don't use StreamYard, so I can't complain about them too much. Let's hope we can find Larry. Hope this is the right. Bear with me, guys. Dead air, I know is not good, but I got to get this done. And we'll hope Larry can get in this way. Larry's got a couple of different. So I want to hit him twice, actually. Maybe the other one's gone. Here's the other one. We'll see if Larry gets one of these. All right, guys, we'll be back in this in a second. Bear with me. Not sure which one of these he's going to get, so we got to send them to both. All right, good. We're good to go. Let me get to your comments, Larry. Hopefully, where are we? Got a comment here. Let me get in here. Who's this? Okie Packer fan. We cover it well on Let's Talk Oklahoma Sports. Who is this, I wonder? Let's Talk Oklahoma Sports. Alan. What's going to happen? Boomer Sooner. Don't hide behind your Wait a minute. That can't be. I got to be wrong. This isn't Alan. Alan's not a Packer fan. Anyway, welcome, Okie Packer fan 10. And I want to know if you're affiliated with one Alan Perales, who's also does an Oklahoma related show. So check them out. Either way, you can certainly check out Let's Talk Oklahoma Sports. I do believe that is a show that's on Let's Talk Sports. Alan's cousin, Sean. Good to have you with us, Sean. You guys do cover Oklahoma sports great. I want to tell you, and I did say this, by the way, Sean, if you haven't been watching my show, Alan and I kind of go back and forth. And I'd love to get into this Big 12 conversation with you and Alan here and wherever else we can do something on your show. I'd love to do it because the Big 12 is trying to save themselves. And I think they've done a pretty good job. Their commissioner's performance compared to the Pac-12 has been like night and day. And I did say this, Sean. I started to say this a second ago. I do believe on the way out the door, Oklahoma, and I do want to know if you guys will remain Oklahoma fans or stick with your Big 12 fandom. Can you do both? I do think Oklahoma or Texas does win the Big 12 on the way out the door. And by the way, while we're talking about Oklahoma, I want to send out, I do believe I saw a story, and I hope I was trying to confirm this because now I don't see the story on ESPN, but let me check. And maybe you can do this. I heard Coach Venable's wife was sick, and if that's the case, I want to send our best wishes to her, and hopefully she has a speedy recovery. So hopefully that's the case. What do we got here? Yeah, it's frustrating. They got competent after we're gone. Are they the conference got competent, right? Yes. You know what though? I got to tell you, I still think Oklahoma and Texas are making a mistake. They're the brand in the Big 12. They're not going to be the brand in the SEC. They're just going to be another school. Not just like they're not Vanderbilt. I get that. But they're not going to be Alabama. They're not going to be Georgia. They're not going to be even LSU or Tennessee. Brand-wise. You know, and I know there's other reasons. This is what has got it, though. It's money, man. That's what drove all of this. Larry got the invite. Got a problem with the, I'm curious, Sean, and I meant to ask Alan about this. If you guys had any trouble, I think you're using StreamYard as you had gotten set up to do your shows. Have you had any trouble with people getting your emails? Because mine are not going through, at least when I'm emailing through StreamYard. So I'm curious. So again, if Coach Venable's wife is under the weather, we'd like to send her best wishes along to her. We're way more about championships than conference loyalty. Well, Oklahoma has stayed fairly loyal, as if there is such a thing in college sports today. There's no loyalty, right? I mean, again, what's the next thing? What's the next domino to fall that would you go, oh my God, that ship sailed for me? It wasn't even Oklahoma and Texas that really got me that aha moment where I went, it's over. Nothing will surprise me ever again. When USC left the Pac-12 for the Big Ten, that's when it was for me. So we've got more of that coming. I see Larry's in the room. I'm going to take two more quick comments. We're going to bring Larry in. We'll talk a little Wake Forest baseball to wrap up their season. We didn't get a chance to get him in here. He had a lot. He was a busy guy because they had a great season. Sean is saying my dad's conference, the Big 8, was the last time we cared like that. I get it. Believe me, I understand. Anthony Price is with us tonight. Good evening, Anthony. Deion Sanders should have stayed in the Pac-12. Look, at Colorado's, there's really no reason for them to stay. And that's not necessarily a blow competition-wise, I don't think, to even in basketball, in any sport, really. And maybe there's some other sports that it matters. But it's when you can't keep Colorado in your conference, that's when you know the end is near, and you're really probably bleeding out right now. So we're going to talk about some of this closer to the Southeast in the ACC country, Tobacco Road, if you will, through the Southeast with Larry. But we're going to talk some other stuff too. And we want to say hi to Lary Sorensen. We haven't talked to him in a while. Hello, Larry.
Keith, how you doing? You're wound up tonight, man.
I am. You know, it's like things are quiet, and then boom. What? How does Colorado cause such a this little ripple, you would think, and now all of a sudden there's like tidal waves getting ready to just overwhelm us all?
Yeah, when did Colorado become a game changer in college football?
Amazing that this could have this type of effect. And again, we don't know what rumors are true, but whispers become screams at some point. And I'll start there. I do want to talk about.
Well, you know what it is? It's August. There's no games. What else is there to talk about? So we've got people that have to find something to talk about and write about and do snippets on and editorialize, and so that's what we do.
Just to get my blood pressure up? Is that what they have to do? Do they hate me that much? How are you been, Larry? How was your summer, by the way?
Good, quick, very, very quick.
I do want to talk before we jump into the football, and which we will do, and talk about some of the rumors around in your neck of the woods. You also, as I've told people, and you've mentioned here, you also do Wake Forest baseball as well as football, and what a great season you guys had. A little short at the World Series, but nothing to be ashamed of. What a tremendous season. What's your final takeaway on what the Demon Deacons were able to do this year?
It truly was an amazing year, very special. There are some years that are just different, and the chemistry on this team was outstanding. And anytime you're on a winning club, you always say we've got this great chemistry, everybody loves each other, but they truly do. I mean, this team really did everything together, and it was heartbreaking to watch them split up those last couple of days after losing to LSU to see who was going to go to play Florida in the championship series. But it was a magnificent season. 10 players from that team were drafted and have signed and are moving on. So there's going to be some new faces next year, but they're bringing in some big-time talent. And amongst other things, it really exposed the Wake Forest program to the nation as a top quality type place to go, not only for the baseball program and the other things, but for the education as well. So it was a good trip all the way around.
Who was had 2 first-round draft picks, I think, too, in that 10. Who do you think of those 10 players would you say? I don't want to say can't miss, because prospects are called prospects for a reason, but who would you think has the best chance to make a real impact, and maybe even the soonest?
Well, to me, Rhett Lauder, the young man that was taken the 7th player by Cincinnati, is ready to pitch in the big leagues now. He's got 4 pitches that are very well developed. He's not afraid to use any pitch in any situation, no matter whether there's men on second and third, nobody out, or nobody on and 2 out. He'll pitch the same way and throw the same pitches. So I think he's got the mentality. He's got the fortitude, the intestinal fortitudes, as people like to say. And I think he's got the whole package. And he's got a chance to be an 8 to 10 year type player in the big leagues.
He was. I watched him pitch, obviously, in a College World Series and a couple other times during the course of the year. And he seems mature behind his years as well. He knows what he's doing out there. He's not just out there throwing.
Yeah, he won every award you can win, both academically and as an athlete. I mean, he won some awards for his academics, and I told my sister, who used to be the vice provost at Wake Forest, about it. She said, well, what's he majoring in? Communications, kinetics? And I said, economics. And she screamed, economics? That's one of the toughest programs in the school. So real bright kid. The hair throws you off a little bit. He's got that hair over his shoulders, and it really kind of throws you. But he's a very talented artist as well.
Oh, really?
He paints, and he's very, very good. And he said he did it because his brother was, and he wanted to be better than his brother. So he's got some competitor in him too.
Cool. Before I continue, I just want to say, Sean, if you want, we'll continue the Big 12 conversation later on in the show if you want. Don't go away. We'll pick it up later, but I want to stick with these topics with Larry for now. So, Larry, were you able to get out there? Did you go out and broadcast for the?
Yeah, we broadcast. Yeah. We streamed all the games on audio Fort Learfield, actually. So it was a big league production. Stan Cotton, my football partner, and I did them, and we do TV during the regular season, and we switched over to the audio because ESPN obviously had the television. So we had a blast. We're out there the whole time, and checked an item off my wife's bucket list, which is always a big plus when you can do that. She got to go to Omaha with us, and
what was it? What was the experience like? I mean, if I'm not mistaken, Wake hadn't been there. I want to say
1955.
55. Okay, I was close. What was it like? What's the atmosphere like at the College World Series?
Well, see, I went 30 years ago when it was at Rosenblatt Stadium, and I broadcast for ESPN for 3 years with Tim Brando and Mike Patrick, and it was fantastic. It was unbelievable. And it's like, for the folks out there that have kids that play in tournaments in whatever sport, it's like the best tournament on steroids times 1,000. Because there's 24,000 people in the stands, and the whole town gets behind it. They pick their favorites. They have service clubs that sponsor them, that take them around to different events, and they do different things around the city. And it's really like a huge weekend tournament stretched out over 2 weeks. And it's just absolutely a blast. Put it on your bucket list if you're a fan of baseball, period. But if you're a college baseball fan, you got to get out there.
It looks like a great, great time. There was a couple of guys from Wake Forest, from this Wake Forest team that were playing in the collegiate league up here in upstate New York, in Amsterdam, New York, for the Amsterdam Mohawks, who have won their league. I want to say like 10 years in a row. They're just unbelievable. I think they had 2 losses this year. They're playing a championship game tonight. Rick Sherlock, who's one of your big supporters, is at that game tonight. So he's trying to watch you and watch the game at the same time. So I don't know how that's working out, but I did want to check in on a couple of the players that played there and see what your thoughts were on them. There's a shortstop named Merrick Houston, who I know played quite a bit with Wake this year.
He played all but one game. He played in all but one game as a freshman, and he hit about 240, but he's got a magic glove. He's got a big league type glove already. He was voted the number 2 prospect in Florida a couple years ago as a shortstop at the big tournament that they have in Jupiter. Really slick, really great presence on the field, knows where he is and what he's doing. And I think made everybody around Wake Forest that used to think offense so much realize that having that one solid guy at shortstop is the glue that your defense needs. And that was the biggest change for Wake this year with their pitching staff as well, who led the nation in ERA by 0.8 of a run, was their defense was so much better. And Houston was a huge, huge part of that. Great player, great kid.
Just a freshman too, so he's got a lot of, hopefully he's got a lot of years ahead of him. We
2
never
more.
know. But big league potential in
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely, yeah. And I made a point because you knew he wasn't going to hit. He's still not filled out. He's got good size. He's got big hands. He's got some feet, but he hasn't filled out yet, and he's going to a little bit more, and he'll have a little bit of pop. I think he had 4 home runs this year, including a grand slam in the Super Regionals, and he's going to be a fine player, got a very strong arm, absolutely big league potential, but really understands the game and the nuances of the game for a youngster. It's fun to watch.
And another player from Wake, I don't know that he played this year. I didn't see any stats for him. He's an Amsterdam native, Carson Catugno, right-handed pitcher. What do you know about Carson?
Yeah, pitcher, got a live arm, and as you know from following a little bit, the pitching staff was pretty deep this year. You know, it was really tough to get innings, and even there were a lot of blowout games, and it was hard for the regular guys to get innings to keep everybody going. So just one of those years where his number didn't come up, but they think that he can be a part of the program and be a significant contributor.
I want to make a segue here. So this program lost a lot of kids, but it sounds like there's some good young talent there to maybe have a sustained run.
Plus, they got a transfer from Tennessee named Burns, who a lot of people are projecting as the first player to be taken in the college draft next year. Throws 100 miles per hour, and he'll be the Friday night starter in all likelihood. And then behind him, you've got a youngster named Josh Huddle, who will probably be a first-round draft pick next year as well. So, and a kid named Michael Massey will be their Sunday guy, who's a 96, 97 mile per hour thrower. So their starting rotation is going to be very, very good next year again.
Well, I'm going to segue into the football situation with this baseball as well. I wasn't going to ask you this, but it just popped in my head. Because I read an article early with all this realignment and the way football's going, the direction it's going towards, 2-3 super conferences and really affecting all these other sports. Football, to travel, I mean, it's not as big a deal. You travel once a week, the logistics are much better than, whatever, baseball maybe or basketball, even some of the girls sports. And there's some talk about the way the football situation is affecting all the other sports in schools, that football should just be all by itself. And the other sports should stay in whatever regional alignment they were in or want to be in the future. Do you think they should maybe separate the two entities, football and the rest?
Yeah, I'm not sure exactly how you do it. I'm not sure how you break it down. But I mean, if we're really thinking about the student athletes, and let's take the Big Ten as an example, how are we going to ask kids from USC or UCLA that play tennis to fly to Penn State to play tennis? And so where do you go from there? Okay, you go to Michigan or Michigan State, or you go to Indiana or wherever. So you combine two schools with one flight. Well, then you're out of school for a week.
Yeah.
And you got to do that every other week to keep some continuity to your schedule. And the same flying out the other way. So, the lack of foresight about that kind of stuff really disturbs me. And football is just getting crazy. And it's a school like Wake Forest that's going to get screwed because they're a team that's been successful. They've been to 7 bowl games in a row. And granted, they haven't all been New Year's Day bowls, but they've been to 7 bowls in a row and could, conceivably, if things break white in a 12-game playoff, make their way in. But if you start getting a couple 20-team conferences, they've got no chance. So what's the season? What's the point of playing your season?
It's getting hard. I mean, student athlete is becoming less and less a real thing, at least maybe outside of football. Baseball players might still be student athletes, and the tennis players might be still be student athletes in some regard. But football is getting to be just a minor league feeding system for the pros. That's all.
Yeah, And I don't know if you saw what came out of the ACC winter meetings, coach football meetings that were held, not winter meetings, summer meetings that were held last week, and I was in Charlotte for 3 days. But Dave Clawson, about the second thing that he said in his opening dialogue was, we had about 6 players that were approached by other schools and offered between $150,000 and $500,000 to transfer and come play for them, and that's just wrong. That's just completely misusing the idea, the integrity. It's just sleazy.
There was a story similar to that too. Of I can't remember the player. There was a mystery. Who was the player? This came out yesterday, I thought. One of the big name players, but a mystery school had offered him like $3 million to jump ship. I mean, and again, that's where the NIL and the transfer portal, when you look at them separately, you say, oh, there's some good in both of those if you use them the right way. But when you put them together and they're being used the way they're being used now, and everybody's a free agent every year, it's just a recipe for disaster. So
it absolutely is. And that was really the focus of the entire series of meetings. And it's what Jim Phillips, the commissioner, focused in on immediately. He said, we have to establish some kind of control over this. And the problem is the individual states have different laws.
Yeah. And
so every state's going in their own direction, and every school's trying to find loopholes within their own state. And it spreads, the circle spreads way too far, and everybody's finding the back door into it.
Do you hold out much hope for the PASS Act, the bipartisan bill put forward by Tommy Tuberville and Manchin? I mean, I personally don't think it's going to happen, but
I don't. But I think you've got to start somewhere. Yeah. If you're going to take on huge projects, you've got to start. You don't walk into it with the final answer, and maybe you make mistakes along the way, but you've got to start, or else you never get anything. And all you do is you give the people that are looking for ways to do it illegally and looking for ways to cut the corners, you give them more time to do it. So they've got to start getting some reign over it somehow and start bringing people back into a central area where everybody's on the same page.
Well, the NCAA's passed the buck on this long enough, waiting for the government to get involved, apparently. But at the end of the day, whatever legislation you pass, whatever rules you put into place, somebody's got to police it. And that's where the problems always arise. Who's going to police all this?
Yeah, and some of the different things that come out, trying to establish what merits what punishment, looking at the thing in Michigan, and I'm a Michigan guy,
Yeah.
but looking at some of the things that Jim Harbaugh is being suspended for compared to some of the things at some of the other schools where we've seen people get similar type suspensions, that's pretty interesting.
I think that I talked about that last week, and that, to me, this just smells like a case of the cover-up was a bigger deal than the crime, right?
Absolutely. And I don't even know if cover-up is the right word. I think it's just Harbaugh, just somebody ticked him off.
Yeah.
And so, he just said, well, screw you. And this is all I'm going to say about it. And so.
Well, since we're talking about your former school and Jim Harbaugh, I'll stay on it just for a second. I don't see this 4-game suspension hurting them because I mean they're playing like the Little Sisters of the Poor for 4 weeks at home. I think Rutgers is probably the best game they have in that 4-game stretch. If I'm right, they're all at home, so
yeah,
back 4-0.
And the stands will be packed, and who knows? Some good might come out of it. It might give him a chance to step back, look at things from another angle, and see some things that might help him later in the year. Who knows? But right now it's a little bit of wild west with the NCAA and all the different things that are going on. The transfer portal, the NIL, the whole thing is just a shootout right now.
Well, I mean, hard to believe that we've got stuff to overshadow that this week. You talked about being at the media days for the ACC last week in Charlotte, I think you said, right?
Right.
Yeah. So you talked about some of the things that were discussed. Was there any inkling? I mean, today, Florida State drops a bomb saying it's not really a question of if, it's when we leave the ACC because of money and revenue.
Yeah.
There's been talk this week, not really on the big media outlets, but in the peripheral, that Clemson and Florida State are possibly going to the Big Ten. It's possible that the ACC and the Pac-12 or whatever's left of the Pac-12 in the next couple of months will form. You talked about a coast-to-coast league. They'd have a coast-to-coast and a north to south alignment from Seattle to Miami and Boston to Los Angeles, basically. Do you see? I mean, I don't see how that's good for the sport at all, but can the ACC withstand losing Clemson and Florida State right now?
Oh, I think that they can. I'm not sure how they would replace them or if they would replace them. And it certainly would be a blow. I don't know if Clemson and Florida State can afford it quite as willingly as they think. The interesting thing to me is they one of the thoughts that came out of their spring meetings was, can we gear more money towards the brands that are our higher brands in the league, and maybe reward them for their playoff experience and their national championships and everything else. And if you go back over a 10-year span, I'm not sure that Florida State would find themselves as high up in the hierarchy as they'd like to think that they are. They've won some track championships. Wake Forest has won some golf championships. Florida State the last 10 years has not been the dominant force outside of the shopping stores. They have not been the dominant force on the athletic fields that they had been in years gone by. So if you actually did a study on which teams would be rewarded with extra money, I think some people might be a little bit surprised.
Yeah, I thought if I was one of those other schools, I mean, the FSU president today talked basically about how, they and Clemson were basically they're the big boys and everybody else. Sorry, I don't mean to hurt your feelings. Well, if I were Wake or I were North Carolina State or anybody else, I'd be like, or Miami, I mean, who's also got a pretty good pedigree,
right,
by the way, maybe not recently. I'd be like, maybe you got to shut up there, Coach or Mr. President.
Miami hasn't won a heck of a lot in recent years, and a lot of promise about them. They're kind of the Texas of the ACC, and then they're great schools, and their brand actually absolutely is a national brand, and they produce 15,000 graduates a year. I saw this stat someplace not too long ago. If you took every living Wake Forest graduate, they wouldn't fill 3/4 of the Big Ten stadiums. So, there's only about 70,000 living Wake Forest graduates. And so it's hard to compete. And yet they are. The women won a national championship in golf, and the men competed, and the tennis teams and the soccer teams. And you compete against the behemoths, the giants, and still hold your weight. you just don't have the national cachet.
I find it interesting that the trustees and the president weren't really puffing their chests out before maybe they had a nice run at the end of last season, and now they're going to kind of hold the league hostage a little bit. Listen.
Well, I remember one quick story after the Florida State Wake Forest game last year down in Tallahassee. The Florida State people all week long there was a misconstrued and misquoted thing from Dave Clawson, and the Florida State people just went crazy with it. And finally, somebody from the Wake Forest team just said after the game, "Scoreboard, scoreboard. We came to your place and won."
I don't. Listen, is Florida State really going to? Because by August 15th, if they want to leave and be able to play somewhere else next year, they got to inform the league by the 15th of this month. Are they really going to do that without an offer from anybody? I can't see that
happening. I was reading some of the Big Ten stuff before we got together here, and the commissioner said, and the expansion leader from Illinois said, we're looking at things. Yeah, we're looking at 4 teams from the West Coast. Do we want 2 or do we want 4 or what do we want to do? He said, but we're not in a hurry to get anything done and bring anybody else new in. So that didn't sound very encouraging for Florida State or Clemson to me.
It seems like the Big Ten and the SEC now, they're kind of put the brakes on a little bit. Big Ten is talking about 2 more teams, 4 more teams, but they're also slow playing it because I don't think they want to be the ones that pull the pin on a hand grenade that blows up the Pac-12 finally, or potentially the ACC if they were to get raided by one or both of those conferences. I don't think they don't mind taking the schools, but they don't really want the blood on their hands when those conferences are gone.
Yeah, especially if it doesn't work.
Yeah,
especially if it doesn't work. And, I think you were talking about it when I was sitting in your green room backstage.
You didn't drink all the Kool-Aid back there, did you?
No, I did not. But the thing that I feel about it is that rivalry of bragging rights with your neighbor and the conversations about your favorite team. I think we're going to miss all that. I really do. I think it's just turning into pro stuff where you're going to come across the occasional guy that lives in Pennsylvania that likes USC. But more than likely, they're Penn State fans, or there's somebody else from the East Coast, or there's somebody from the Midwest fans. And if we start going all over the country and doing all this stuff, where's the water cooler bragging rights that was so much a fun part of it? I guess the internet's it. And if you don't mind spending 4 hours a day on the internet, finding that one guy that you can get to argue with you, I don't know.
Yeah, I don't think it's a matter of when we miss it. I already miss it. I mean, who doesn't miss Nebraska, Oklahoma? I grew up the day after Thanksgiving was always Nebraska, Oklahoma. And it was usually for some pretty big stakes too. So, I mean, everybody's going to miss that. You're not going to be able to take all those rivalries with you,
Going to that 3-team every year format. Wake Forest won't play NC State, and that's just they're an hour down the road. In Tobacco Road, as you on Tobacco Road,
and they won't play them. Their 3 teams to play every year. Is it 3 teams?
They've got 3 teams: Duke, Georgia Tech, and Virginia Tech.
It just doesn't feel like.
I can see you leaping out of your seat with enthusiasm.
Yeah, it doesn't feel like. Oh yeah, I can't wait for those games. I mean, that's too bad.
Oh man.
What else? Did any good news come out of the media days last week that we might not know?
Wake Forest is going to have a very good quarterback. He's ready to go. I think the conference has got good talent. And, you look at some of the numbers where they've had the second most draftees and the second most guys from the conference playing in the NFL. There's a lot of talent in the league, and people keep poo-pooing it, saying it's the Big Ten and the SEC. And certainly the SEC has dominated everything. But I don't think you can ignore the ACC. And I think that there are going to be some very good teams. Clemson is going to be good. Florida State should be very good. I think Duke, if you could, if you were a smart guy and wanted to back pocket a little bit of something and were willing to take a little risk, Duke to me is really a sleeper. Mike Elko is a smart guy. His players are 1,000% into what he's preaching. And I think that they had a good team last year, and I think they're going to be even better this year.
Well, I think the league is, again, it's sneaky good at the top. I think Florida. Listen, I said last week, Florida State's kind of my sleeper to make the playoff. I don't know if I could root for them now after the bomb they dropped today, and they're I don't know, higher than mighty. That's my sleeper to make the last 4-team playoff, and beat Clemson out. I think Clemson's going to be very, very good this year myself. Yeah. Interested to see what Wake does with some losses. Sam Hartman, what's the feeling about Sam Hartman around Wake Forest? They're okay with it. He gave him a great career there. They're okay with him playing his last year.
He gave a rib for the school.
Yeah. Good point.
So he gave his heart and soul and was an amazing player, and everybody wishes him well. I hate that it came down to this, but at some point in time, he'd been there for 5 years, and at some point in time, you have to look out for yourself as well. He probably would have been a third-day draft pick. He went to Notre Dame, and he got big NIL money, got a chance to be the Heisman Trophy winner, which is bigger than any NIL money or NFL money, probably. And, so good for him. No, everybody wishes him well, thanks him for what he contributed, and, are thrilled that it's going to be an interesting day when they play each other and go up to South Bend. That'll be a very interesting game.
Are they playing this year?
Yeah. Up in South Bend in November.
Well, I wish. It's going to be interesting to see if he can make a big difference at Notre Dame. They haven't had.
He'll be a really good player for them. He'll fit into their offense very nicely. Did you see what he's doing with the rib that they took out when he had that surgery? He's making a necklace out of it.
I did hear that, actually.
He's making a necklace out of it.
He's a character, right?
A little bit, but he's a pretty smart guy and a great quarterback.
Well, hopefully, things will calm down here. We'll get to some real football here in a few weeks. We're not that far away. It's hard to believe it's stuck up on us so quickly.
If you can believe this, Wake Forest opens up with Elon on Thursday night, a month from tomorrow, 4 weeks from tomorrow, and then has the week off and plays Vanderbilt at 11 o'clock in the morning on the following Saturday. So you go from 7 o'clock at night to 11 o'clock in the morning the following Saturday. It's going to be an interesting start to the season, but it's here. I'm going up to practice Friday. They started on Monday, and I'm going to get on up to practice on Friday and see what's going on.
I seem to ask you this question a lot about Dave Clawson. I mean, every time they're, I don't know. I want to talk to you a little about, before you go, about the Northwestern situation. His name has come up. If they've got an interim coach, I mean, if he does anything this year and they don't totally implode, I mean, I would think he'll get the job, because I'm not sure who they're going to get to take it. But Dave Clawson's name has come up there among some others as a potential candidate. Is Northwestern a job to leave Wake Forest for?
I really don't think so, and I really don't think under those circumstances, because I don't think he's really thinking about putting 10 more years into it and going through a rebuild to get it where Wake Forest is now. They just opened up a $40 million complex with a new locker room and nutrition center and study hall and everything else. So that just opened up last week. And, Wake Forest has put $120 million into the football program in the last 7 years. And they're serious about it. And they're showing the student athletes that they're serious about it. So I think he's very comfortable. He makes a very nice contract. He's happy with it. His family he said the other night, he said, I've slept in the same house for the last 10 years and I like it. And so I don't think he's really ready to pull up roots and go anyplace else.
Could this situation ever have happened under Dave Clawson? I mean, how does a coach not know this is going on and slap it down quickly? I don't understand that.
Man, it seems like you should be a little bit more in touch with what's going on with your guys. Certainly some assistant coaches had to hear rumblings and some things that said, "Hey, what? You did what?"
Don't they all
have that?
Larry, don't they all have to get fired? I mean, if you're firing Pat Fitzgerald, and he has to know, he's the head coach, and the buck stops there. But the guys under him are the guys who are in the locker room and spending the most time with these kids. They have to know.
I don't know if you can figure out how discipline works in anything these days. You're a better man than me, Keith.
Do you think this is a situation that's rampant in college sports?
I don't. I think that the parameters have been reined in enough. In the older days, maybe. I mean, I remember some things in college that my fraternity did that in this day and age would get the fraternity shut down, and does. And my fraternity was one of them that got shut down for alcohol-related offenses a few years back, and they've gotten the charter back. So it's hard to believe that could have gone on without anybody knowing about it up there.
Yeah, I agree. And I hope that listen, Northwestern's not a football power, but they had a pretty good run under Pat Fitzgerald, and they were competitive many years in the Big Ten. If not winning championships, they were competitive, and it's a shame to see this happen to any school, and it's going to be hard.
And schools like that are that good academically are good for the entire sport. When they have success on the field to match their success off the field, and what they do putting out graduates, and their graduation rates are through the roof. Just like Wake Forest is, just like Rice is, just like Duke is. The amount of quality people that they're putting out into the world in leadership roles is really impressive, and we need to keep those programs a vital part of it.
I agree. Larry, listen, thanks for coming on and catching us up, and I hope we'll definitely catch up as the season gets underway, and stay in touch with our good friends in the ACC, and hopefully there'll be a lot of news on the field and less of it off that we get to talk about, hopefully. So
we're due for some football news and some sports news in the college world, and it's coming around soon.
Where'd you move to, by the way? You said you moved.
Yeah, my wife took a new job in Wilson. She's got a daughter that is 6 months pregnant, and her husband's in the military. He's in Special Forces, and it's stationed at Fort Liberty now, I guess, down here. So she had the opportunity to take a job in Wilson, North Carolina. It's about 2.5 hours south of Winston-Salem, so I'll still be commuting up there for the sporting events. But we're close to Ashley and Christian, and can welcome that third grandbaby into the world here in a couple of months.
Well, I hope your move went smooth. I think I told you when we were communicating a couple of weeks ago, we just moved too in the last month, and I hate moving. It's no fun, but it's over.
Yeah, you'll notice I did the close-up so that you couldn't see everything that's on the floor in my office here.
I will say you seem to have a much better internet connection here than you had before, though.
It's fiber, and I highly recommend it to anybody that can get it.
Excellent. Good stuff. Larry, thanks for coming in tonight, and we'll certainly catch up with you soon. I love having you on. I know our viewers like to have you on too. So
good talking to you again.
Have a good night. The tremendous Lary Sorensen from Wake Forest University does the football analyst there, analytics. I don't know. He does football. He does baseball. Great former major league baseball player. Maybe not great, but great. Larry knows what I'm talking about. Played with the Milwaukee Brewers, played with the Cardinals, played with the A's. Great friend of the show. Happy to have him on today. We'll have more coming from Larry. Let's catch up here. Sean's got a lot of comments. I didn't get them all up there, Sean, so I'm going to go through them right now, and I want to welcome, if Ray's still with us. Hi, good, Ray. Good to have you with us tonight. Good evening. Good. Thanks for popping in. Larry's always very informative, and there's a lot of stuff that we catch up on with Larry, not just in the ACC, but in college football in general, and we love to have him on. In fact, I got to get him on to talk some Major League Baseball at some point as well. I missed Sean's comment here. The transfer portal versus the NIL. The transfer portal and the NIL would have been a godsend for what? Oh, I guess you're talking about here, the comments I missed here before. Because you were talking about, I missed all this. Hard to have travel sympathy with Guyman, the closest in-state games. I don't know where Guyman is, Sean. It's not the Oklahoma show. I don't know what you're talking about. I'm guessing this is high school football. Usually follow bus rides to any school activities. Oh, my gosh. Where the heck were you? Out in the desert? I wish I had played Division III soccer instead of bothering with the academics I couldn't handle. I don't mean to laugh at your academic problem. I'm laughing at the fact that if you're good enough, you don't need to worry about the academics these days. Again, Ray Phillips. We didn't talk about this. I know it was all non-conference games in Rutgers. This is not much of a penalty in my mind, and nor should it be. I don't think again, as I talked about with Larry, I think this was more because Jim Harbaugh is thumbing his nose at the NCAA, as he well should. The NCAA is a bunch of buffoons. They can't run anything. This whole PASS Act, if it passes, the NCAA is just trying to pass the buck, but still somebody's got to police this. Who's that going to be? And why is Jim Harbaugh such a polarizing figure? Got a couple new people tonight watching the show. Anthony, I know you're here. I don't think you were here with us last week. Maybe you were. Sean, I know you're new. Why is Jim Harbaugh such a polarizing figure? All he's done is go and win in places. Starts at San Diego. Nobody wins at San Diego in college. Ups his game, uses that to get a better gig at Stanford. Stanford was in the dumps when he got there, and he took them almost to the edges of a national championship potential. He had a great quarterback, of course. He goes to San Francisco off of that job and takes a team that wasn't as good as a lot of other teams. Listen, he went to a Super Bowl with Colin Kaepernick, who's not a good NFL quarterback, never was. He was a gimmick quarterback. He used that gimmick while he could and got to a Super Bowl. Parlayed that into a better job, but at his alma mater. So I don't see him as a job hopper. I'm not sure why Jim Harbaugh gets it as tough as he does. Wouldn't be surprised if Florida State, Miami, Clemson come to the SEC together, especially with the SEC not willing to commit to the schedule format. The problem with the ACC teams, Sean, is going to be, number one, it'll cost them a big money to buy their way out. Plus, they've got, besides the buyout that they'd have to absorb, there's also something, they've got another, damn it. If I can find it quick. Bear with me. Sorry. I can't remember what they call it. There's another agreement that the teams, the schools have amongst each other that would cost even more to get out of. So I don't know. It's going to be prohibitive. Unless this league folds, I don't know how these teams can possibly move. And I'll be honest with you. When the Big Ten was looking around talking to Florida State, I would think Miami's a better fit for the Big Ten than Florida State. The academics are important in the Big Ten, and Miami has tremendous academics. Night and day over Florida State, I can tell you. People do not think of the University of Miami as a great academic school. It's one of the best in the country. But you missed the rivalries. F the Texas schools. You're about to leave with one of them, and you're going to be playing with all of them. Well, not all of them. You keep one of the biggest rivalries. The good thing about you leaving with Texas is you do keep one of the best college football rivalries alive in the Red River rivalry. That's not easy to say, by the way. Sean's been busy. I will catch up with all your comments. I promise you, Sean. Bear with me. Next, Oklahoma, Nebraska, home and home, currently scheduled for 30-31. I'll be 70 years old. I'm not sure if that was about that. I think you put that up when either I was talking about Florida State winning or Larry was talking about Duke. I will tell you, if this is about Duke, let me put your next one up because it might be. Duke could win this league. I'm telling you right now, Duke, he's right. Mike Echo is a really good coach. Mike Echo will not be at Duke very long. Mike Echo will have a big-time college football job within the next 2 years. Duke would win the league even if they could steal Daniel Jones back from the Giants. Duke had a really good season last year. Duke is going to be better this year. They bring back a lot of kids. And Duke, again, ACC gets a bad rap. I had this argument with Alan a lot that the Big 12, to me, and the Big 12 and the ACC to me are mirror images of each other. There's good teams at the top. And there's always surprises, and there's teams that can rise up. Duke will be one of those teams this year. I think Miami will bounce back this year. Going away from the divisions helps Florida State. Florida State, Clemson will probably play twice this year, most likely, unless we get some crazy surprises, which could happen. And that's going to determine potentially one of the 4 playoff spots. Will the defense take a step forward this year? My bad, Rick. I didn't see that while Larry was on, but we'll have Larry on again. The defense is going to have to take a step forward because they're still going to have a up and down offense. I mean, they're not changing their offensive approach, but until it's proven otherwise, they don't have the same group of talented athletes to run that offense. I can't ask you, Rick, because you're at the game, and I don't think your feed would be as good as somebody else's. I'm curious about the feed tonight. I'll go back and watch this, obviously. I do feel like I've had a couple of little times where I got a little max headroom things going on here, but believe me, I am now sitting right next to the router. I sit here, the speed is like 400. The upload is over 20. And if I'm having a problem now, then I got to go to StreamYard. And that's where we'll have to get to. Sean's talking about the Notre Dame to the Big Ten rumors. They've stopped. I don't know how Notre Dame can continue to function. Well, as long as they got their own TV contract, they probably can. They don't have to share with anybody. But their TV contract, I believe, only pays them $25 million a year. They could go to the Big Ten and get 50 or 60. Or is somebody going to step up and pay just Notre Dame that much money? I don't think so. Hell, well, maybe because NBC already was putting games on Peacock last year, so you had to literally pay for the games. But I haven't heard much about USC. It seems a natural. When USC and UCLA came over, and then there was talk about Stanford coming into the league, Notre Dame was a perfect choice to be able to join all those teams because they play USC every year. They play Stanford every year. They'd be the perfect person to put in that Western division with USC, UCLA, Stanford. And they're going to need to join a league, but it's possible they don't want to get lost and swallowed up in one of these big leagues. Listen, you'll think I'm crazy, but don't count the Big 12 out of the Notre Dame sweepstakes if Notre Dame decides to go the league route. Notre Dame wants to be the guy. They won't be the guy in the Big Ten ever. Not as long as Ohio State and Michigan are there. Penn State's found that out. They're not going to go to the SEC and be the guy. They could probably be part of the potential saving of the ACC if the ACC were to consider poaching those SEC teams that we talked about. And listen, when I talk about this, I'm talking about the realities. I'm not in favor of any of this. Regional sport, football. You're losing regional rivalries. Oklahoma's been playing. How long has Oklahoma played in the Pac? I'm sorry, the Pac. The Big Eight. First, Sean, your dad was a fan. Oklahoma, Nebraska, Kansas. Maybe Kansas hasn't had great constant football success. They've had some success, at different times throughout the decades. Oklahoma game was a big game for them, if not for Oklahoma. Regional rivalries all gone. What do you got here? Sadly, Sean, good stuff, Sean. Sadly, college is child's play compared to prison. I don't know how we got to that comparison, Sean, but I will. What is CO? Correctional? I don't know. Officer life? Are you a CO? Is that why you bring that up, Sean? Listen, I'm not judging you. You could be calling me from prison for all I know. Just kidding. Augustin is with us. Go Ducks. We've talked about your Oregon Ducks potentially. Augustin being the next target of the Big Ten. Potentially the Pac-12 getting swallowed up or being, I should say, merging with the ACC to form some new super league. A lot of rumors going on. And the Pac-12 is on life support right now. Who knew Colorado could have this type of effect? But the point of the matter is, if you can't hold on to Colorado, how are you going to hold on to the Arizona schools? How are you going to hold on to Washington, Oregon? That's why this is such an impactful move by Colorado. And this isn't Deion Sanders' call, by the way. This is, people above him. Probably just because of the brother stuff with John, just like Eli Manning. I'm not sure. I know probably somewhere. I know I'm trying to catch up here, Sean, so I'm not sure. John, Eli Manning. Who are we talking about? Trading TCU, Baylor, Tech, and such for just UT and A&M. If I will, Oregon Duck into the playoff, this happened. Well, listen, you got a clearer path to not this year. Next year, you'll have a very clear path to the 12-team playoff, if the Pac-12 doesn't bleed out and die. Oregon will have a shot this year. Dan Lanning got a new contract. They got a contract extension, I should say. You've got Bo Nix coming back with another year under his belt. Had a great year last year. I think Oregon will give. And listen, USC had a great year last year, but they didn't have to play Oregon or Washington last year. This year they'll get them both. So it'll be interesting to see what happens there. Carlos is with us. Why do people talk about Duke? Why wouldn't you do? Should we just exclude them because they don't have a great football history? They've got a really good head coach in Mike Echo. They've got a veteran roster that had a very good year last year, especially on the level that we expect out of schools like Duke. And schools now, every year, there are 3-4 schools that come out of the depths of nowhere to be very competitive, sometimes at the highest level of major conferences and competing for national championships. Now, listen, Vanderbilt and Duke, the only thing they have in common is academics. Duke is head and shoulders above Vanderbilt in not just basketball, of course, but in football. Duke has had some years where they were not that bad. Look back at the year Steve Spurrier was a coach there, Carlos. So again, we only look at what's happened in recent times, but people who know that Steve Spurrier got his start in college coaching at Duke, and they had some of the best teams in the ACC at that time, or at least for a couple of those years, as he built that program up before he got lured down to Florida, where he obviously became a god. He was a god of Duke. Dave Cutcliffe had some good teams at Duke. Duke is not just a doormat. Duke has had years where they are a doormat, but they are not just year after year a doormat. Ever since it was the Big Six. Now it sounds like we're talking about hockey. Here's John DeLon showing up again at 20 after the hour. At least you made it 5 minutes earlier today, John. Correctional officer. Well, you do some tough work, my friend. And good stuff. What do you got for us, John? Duke has they have a very good, possibly great coach. I agree 100%. John DeLon and I agree 100% on Coach Echo. I think the guy, I said this before. I don't know if you were here when I said it, John, but Mike Elko, keep saying Echo, Mr. Echo from Lost. Mike Elko will be at a major college football program within 2 years. 12-team playoff in 24. Could be 4 SEC teams. Could be. Listen, by 2024, we might have 2 conferences. We don't even know. We could have 1 year the 6-6 12-team playoff. Because you're liable to see the SEC and the Big Ten demanding more automatic bids than one. By the way, well, that's entirely possible because you got to have, the top 6. So the SEC, the Big Ten, the Big 12. You're going to get the 6 highest rated, the 6 highest rated champions. The Power 5 have got 5 of those spots. So that leaves the AAC or one of these other group of 5s. It can't be Notre Dame. Notre Dame's got to fall into the other 6. But so your scenario's certainly possible, Sean, because again, those 6 at-large bids are going to be next highest seeded teams. Carlos Vanderbilt produced Cutler. Duke produced Daniel Jones. Listen, I could argue that Eli Manning is nothing more than Jay Cutler with 2 fluke Super Bowl wins. So, anyway, this isn't a NFL show, so we aren't going to dive into the Daniel Jones conversation. We can do that Friday, Carlos. Carlos, a Mad New Yorker, has a great hatred for Daniel Jones. The fact that the Giants made the playoffs, notwithstanding. Duke will make a run to the playoffs. Will Duke make a run to the playoffs? Not in a 14 playoff. In a 12-team playoff, they would have a shot to be an upset winner in an ACC. There's no way a Duke ACC champion would be ranked lower than the 6th best ranked conference winner. But I don't foresee that's not going to happen in the 4 teams that we certainly have now. Again, I've already said Florida State is my pick to win the ACC and make a run to the playoff from the ACC. Duke has a tougher schedule than the NFL teams. So I'll tell you what, again, not to play into your Carlos and John DeLong's SEC elitism, but playing in the SEC is going to be very difficult, like playing in the NFL come 2024. Look at Florida's schedule next year. Might be the hardest schedule I've ever seen. You think he might end up at Bama? I did not hear that Nick bought a $17 million home on Jupiter Island. The man's an old, how old is Nick Saban? 72? He's not going to coach till he's 80, I don't think. Maybe he will. Nick Saban will go when he wants to go, but you think they're going to go for, does Mike, let me see. Let me pull him up here a second. Does he have any ties? Does he have any ties to Alabama? Does not. Coached at Wake Forest, coached at Notre Dame, coached at Texas A&M, Bowling Green, Hofstra, Richmond, Fordham. Is he a New York guy? Where is he born? New Jersey. I didn't know Mike Elko was a Jersey guy. Be interesting. He will be interesting. I think he might up at Bama. We'll keep an eye on that, John. They play Clemson first. Who's that? Duke? I have no idea. We can check out. Let's check out Duke's schedule. Why don't we do this real quick? We do this a lot on this show. Let's do it now. I'm going to give you Duke's wins and losses. They do start with Clemson at home on ESPN Labor Day weekend. Might be that Monday night. Not sure. Where's my schedule? Where's my calendar? Is that Monday? Is that Labor Day night? It is Labor Day night, 8:00 in Clemson. Interesting matchup to start the season. New offensive coordinator in Clemson, Kublik, whatever the frick his name is. Their new quarterback. Mixed results last year. We'll see if he's going to be the next real thing, the next Trevor Lawrence at Clemson. This is an upset watch. Be careful, guys. I'll say they lose just for the hell of it. They're going to beat Lafayette. They're going to beat Northwestern. They're going to beat UConn. They'll lose to Notre Dame. That's 3-2. They're going to beat North Carolina State, 4-2. They're going to lose to Florida State, 4-3. They beat Louisville, 5-3. I'm going to say they beat Wake at home. Sorry, Larry. 6-3. Beat North Carolina. Beat Virginia. Beat Pittsburgh. 3 losses. Is that 9-3? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. 9-3 with 3 losses to probably 2 top 10 teams. Maybe 3 top 10 teams. Their only losses. How about that? There's a hot take for you. What if Lafayette beats Duke first? Well, then you can forget about everything I just said. Oh, what time is it? We'll go maybe a few minutes late today. Not too long, but LOL, Cutler laughing. Cutler. Jay Cutler had some, Jay Cutler had all the talent to be a top NFL quarterback, but a 2-cent head. And I stand by my comments. That Eli Manning is just a rich man's Jay Cutler. Jay Cutler with 2 fluke Super Bowl wins. John says, I don't know about you, but I wouldn't buy a house that expensive unless I plan to use it. Well, you and I probably don't have $17 million just laying around to spend on a house that we won't live in. And he can spend plenty of time in Jupiter and still coach at Alabama. Right? I mean, it's not like an overnight trip. But listen, as I said, he's getting up there. He's not a young guy anymore. How old is he? Where's my coaches? All right, where are you? Nick Saban. $71. He'll be 72 in October, so I was close enough. I do say they beat North Carolina State. Their quarterback is now playing at Kentucky. They beat UConn. Great job up there by Jim Mora. By the way, UConn being talked about, Sean, as another potential candidate to join the Big 12 as they want to get this coast-to-coast, sort of coast-to-coast thing going. UConn has been coming up in conversation here in the last week as far as joining the Big 12. Great job by Jim Mora there, but listen, they didn't beat any really good teams last year. And it's hard to play a competitive, independent schedule today. Pittsburgh, listen, Pat Narduzzi always finds a way to not have as good a team as he should. And I did say they would lose to FSU. They'll lose 3 games. I think Duke will lose 3 games. That's my hot take. They'll lose 3 games to 3 top 10 teams. Clemson, Florida State, and Notre Dame. All will finish in the top 10. Yeah, I just have them winning 9. 72 in October. Thank you, John. Probably got that up there before I found it. Klubnik. Thank you. Klubnik, Stanley Kubrick. Was that his dad, Stanley Kubrick? It's going to be interesting to see if he's the next great thing that Clemson fans think he will be. Cutler did not play in a Super Bowl, Carlos. When did Jay Cutler play in a Super Bowl? It's a college show, but I'll indulge your comment because it's incorrect. Jay Cutler never played in a Super Bowl. He was with Denver when Denver was not any good. Probably should have looked him up in the 7-9, 10-5 in Chicago. They lost, I believe, to I think one of those teams lost to the New Orleans team that won the Super Bowl. But he never played. That was as close as he ever came to a Super Bowl, and that it may have been an NFC Championship game. But he certainly never played in a Super Bowl. Then good for Lafayette. Married to a Louis. You're married to a Cajun. Welcome, Sean. Meet John DeLong, our raging Cajun here at TGI Sports Talk College Football Huddle. Always thought Cutler was a drug addict. Had a really bad personality disorder, or both. I just think he was a miserable person. I'm not sure if he had either of those things, John. You could be right, though. He acted like he had a personality disorder. I just think he was an unhappy, miserable person. Rex Grossman versus Peyton Manning played for the Bears. That may be who you're thinking about. Another tremendous NFL quarterback. Rex Grossman had a nice career at Florida, more or less. What do I think about the rough part of USC's schedule, the 5-game stretch starting with Notre Dame? Let's take a quick look. We're going to go a little long because John came in late. Listen, I said last year, USC had a pass last year, not playing Oregon or Washington. That doesn't happen this year, I don't believe. Let me find them here. Let's see what USC can do. San Jose State, Nevada, Stanford, Arizona State, Colorado, Arizona. 5-0 when they get to Notre Dame, right? At Notre Dame, they lose 5-1. They got Utah at home. I'm going to give them that game. If their defense is a tad better, it's all they needed to be last year was a tad better. Game was in Utah. This year, I'll give them the win, 6-1. Cal, they'll beat 7-1. I'm going to have them lose to Washington. Washington will win the Pac-10. 7-2. No, it's got to have 8-2. At Oregon, that's going to be the game that this could decide whether they get to the Big 10 champion, or Big 12 champion, Pac-12 champion. These leagues are all. Oregon USC will determine one of the participants, at least, in the Pac-12 championship. And then, of course, they finish up at UCLA. So 5 of those 6 games, very rough. They do get UCLA at home. They get Washington at home. They get Utah at home. I think they lose 2 of those 5 games. 5 of they're going to beat Cal. Cal's easy. You think they come out 3-2. So you have them losing. So what did I have them? I think I had them losing to Notre Dame and Washington, 3-2. Well, I have them 4-2 the last 6 games because Cal's stuck in the middle of that 5 you're talking about, Jen. King, I said, I did not. I'm sorry. I apologize for not calling you the king of SEC elitist. John does relish the term, and I like the way he embraces his elitism. My bad, you're right. It was Rex with ears. You know what? They both were terrible, so Rex with the Bears. I wonder what Rex with ears meant. The other former SEC quarterback. But that's a little vague, Carlos. He was in the NFC playoffs. Well, oh, gosh. Rick Sherlock, what's the score of the game, Rick? Only spoke for a minute. Too much noise. His hands were full of free sunglasses. Who's that? I must have missed something. Who was speaking? Give me a score, I guess, before we go, Rick. You think they lose to Utah and Washington and possibly Oregon. So I've got them beating Utah. I have them losing to Notre Dame and Washington. Maybe Oregon, too. I'm going to say that. Again, I think that Oregon game will probably determine one of those two teams will face Washington in the championship game of the Pac-12. That's what I'll go out on. 1-0 Mohawks, bottom of the 6th. Go Mohawks. Rick, I don't know how much you heard of Larry's talk. We talked about he's very high on the shortstop. I forget his name already. Merrick Houston. He's very high in him. Said he's got a great glove. I think he was late getting to the, as you might have said, he was late getting to the Mohawks this summer, but probably because he went to the College World Series with Wake Forest. But tremendous accolades were thrown his way by our own Lary Sorensen. So he'll bear some watching. Just a freshman, and he says he will be a Major League Baseball shortstop at some point. Hoping you're right, John F. Lincoln Riley. F. Lincoln Riley. Another polarizing guy. Did Lincoln Riley do something wrong taking a new job? Did Lincoln Riley know that Oklahoma was going to the SEC and didn't want to go there? College coaches do this all the time. They aren't always vilified. I do think Brent Venable, and again, I know his wife is struggling with some health issues. We wish her well. I think Brent Venable better compete for the Big 12 championship this year, as I have said I think he will do, because I think he's on the hot seat there. You cannot – that team last year was better than 6 and 7 talent. Some guys are just good coordinators. Is Brett Venable that guy, or is he going to step up and show that he can be a great head coach? Marcus Freeman got off to a horrendous start last year with Notre Dame, if you remember, losing this to Marshall. Who else? They lost to another team early on. They were in really bad shape. Finished strong. Lost their bowl game. Played well, though, the last half of the season. I think that will do Marcus Freeman very it will do him well to have gone through those travails and played better after them. You can't say that about Oklahoma. Oklahoma struggled all year. Don't have faith in Freeman. I think Notre Dame goes 8-4 again this year. If he goes 8-4, I think they finished 9-4 last year, if I'm not mistaken, right? Well, you're probably not counting a bowl game, right? So they were 8-3 last year, I think, and they lost their. I can't be right. They couldn't have been 9-3, could they? I think they finished 9-4 and lost their bowl game. No, I guess they won their bowl game. I'm sorry, that's my mistake. They beat Shane Rattler, and listen, it's a lot of, listen to his piece. Good stuff. He had a lot of good things to say about a lot of those kids. And I'll tell you, a couple of those pitchers with Wake Forest are going to be really good. Oklahoma is nobody's stepping stone. Oh, come on. Well, Barry coached after that. He coached two things. They were not there for life because Bud Wilkinson coached the St. Louis Cardinals in the NFL after he retired from Oklahoma with horrible results. Barry Switzer went to the Cowboys, as we all know. And Bob Stoops is coaching in whatever stupid frickin' league he's coaching in. I don't even know. There's so many frickin' leagues that nobody cares about. I like all those guys, all great coaches. But please. And nobody said Oklahoma's a stepping stone job. Nobody said that. He found a job he liked better. No, if universities would hold these guys that are contracts and not let them just buy their way out, then I'd say you were right. Lakin left because Oklahoma boosters had no faith in him and wouldn't give him any NIL money. It's possible. I think Lincoln Riley's a really good football coach. I think we've seen that. He certainly can coach quarterbacks, as we've seen in Baker Mayfield, at least college quarterbacks. And I'm not talking about, it's not his job to develop pro quarterbacks. So whatever they do when they move on, don't care. Baker Mayfield, great college quarterback. Kyler Murray, a great college quarterback. Jalen Hurts, great college quarterback. So, and Caleb Williams, enough said. He's a great quarterback coach. Is that enough to win a national championship? Is that enough to have people have faith in him? So Sean is upset that Lincoln Riley used Oklahoma as a stepping stone. You're saying he didn't have a choice. He was chased out of town. Yes, he probably got scared of the SEC challenge. Listen, it's possible. All of Oklahoma. I hate to, again, anybody who watches this show enough knows I hate to empower the SEC elitists. But Oklahoma and Texas are about to find out what it's like when you're not the big guns. They are not the big guns in the SEC. They never will be. They were the brand in the Big 12. Texas and Oklahoma were the brand. They're going to go to the SEC. They will never be the brand in the SEC. Not with Alabama, not with Georgia, not with LSU, not even with Ole Miss and Florida. They will never be the brand, certainly over those top three schools, not even over Tennessee. Never. I don't care if they win 3 national championships, which won't happen. Those two schools will never be the face of the SEC. Auburn is more the face of the SEC than either of these schools will ever be. So keep right on jumping leagues, you guys. You guys worry about coaches? Why should coaches stick around? Teams don't even stay in their leagues where they've had great rivalries in history. Doesn't matter anymore. We expect coaches to show loyalty when universities and programs don't even show loyalty to the conferences that help them build their brand. Texas now has done it to 2 conferences. They buried the old Southwest Conference, and they might very well bury the Big 12. Although I think the Big 12 will find a way through this. I believe in Venables because of his Clemson success, and he wants to be here. The question is going to be, do they want him there? Again, fans are not going to sit by. That team had better talent than 6 and 7, Sean, last year. You have to admit that. This team underperformed. That is a direct, what's the word I'm looking for? It's a direct problem for Brett Venable. He's a good guy. He's a great coordinator. We'll find out. I'm not writing him off yet, but he better compete for the Pac-12 or the Big 12 championship on his way out the door, because now he's going to play with some big dogs now. Oklahoma did nothing but go downhill after Lincoln got his hands on the team. I don't think that's true. They made a playoff with Lincoln Riley. Listen, John, don't. Here I am agreeing with you all night long. We're going quite long tonight, aren't we? Oklahoma. I don't want to do it that way. Lincoln Riley. Let me just look up Lincoln Riley. The guy made a football. Team went downhill. Bob Stoops was not winning his last few years there, by the way. I can't get there. I'm probably not going to do this tonight. We'll continue this argument next week, maybe. Here we go. I got Lincoln Riley right now. Okay, he gets to Oklahoma. He goes 12-2, wins the conference. 12-2, wins the conference. 12-2, wins the conference. 9-2, second in the conference. 10-2, third in the conference. Goes to the Rose Bowl, the Orange Bowl, the Peach Bowl, the Cotton Bowl, and the Alamo Bowl. 11-3, wins the conferences last year there, wins the Cotton Bowl. Third in the coaches poll. I'll use the AP poll. Third in the AP poll, fourth in the AP poll, seventh in the AP poll, sixth in the AP poll, 10th in the AP poll, 12th in the AP poll. Oh, that's USC. Sorry. The last one. Sorry. They lost all those bowl games. I'll give you that, except for one Cotton Bowl. And I believe they played in a playoff. Playoffs? They won the Big Ten championship games in 17, 18, 19, and 20. Your narrative is not holding up. You got to come up with something else. Texas Tech and Baylor are powder puff teams compared to Mississippi State and Kentucky. Listen, I'm a big fan of Kentucky. Mark Stoops, I think, is one of the most underrated coaches in the country. Baylor's not a powdered puff. But again, the league overall, the SEC is much deeper. We know that. Missouri's going to be better this year. Vanderbilt will stink forever. Got worse every year. Did it? Did it, John? I don't know if I can. Let's see. Can I see this quickly? They lost to Georgia 54-48. All the way back there is showing no defense. 45-34. He lost to Alabama. Had some trouble with the SEC. No wonder he didn't want to go to the SEC. 63-28. That's a lot. And then losing to LSU. Okay, your point's getting more and more made. Then he wins a Cotton Bowl, by the way, 55-20 over Florida. Did he ever not play in a SEC team in a bowl game? Oregon. He hammered. Now I know why he did. Now I know exactly why he left Oklahoma. Because you're right, John. He had great regular season success. He won the Big 12, but he couldn't beat anybody from the SEC, so there's no way he was going to go coach there week after week. I couldn't handle the real job. Does winning the conference mean nothing to you guys? Nothing at all? I'm confused. I just told you he won. He won the 2017, 2018, 2019, 2020 Big 12 championship games. Again, John's argument is better than yours, Sean. I can see he didn't want to go to the SEC and play because of he couldn't beat those teams ever. Like 3 losses to Clemson, Georgia, and Bama. Again, they don't play in the Big 12. Again, you cannot like Lincoln Riley. I don't think he's a bad football coach. He has a little trouble coaching defense, but he's not the guy coaching. Now, again, Sean, you got a right to hold a grudge. He left you guys high and dry, and you had a 6-7 season with the talent he left behind, except the quarterback he took with him. He left better talent than 6-7 behind. He coached that talent to a 10-2 record. And 5 consecutive top 10 finishes. That's not a bad coach. I don't care how you cut it. Barely. Winning 6 in a row was too easy. We play for natties. Do you? Do you? When's the last time you played for a national title? Hang on. Even Bob Stoops, by the way, guys, was not setting the world on fire when he left there. Was he? Let me double check. I could be wrong. See, this is giving me Oklahoma. I don't want 2017. I want them as a whole. Can't find it right now. That's okay. Again, we can agree to disagree. That's what we do on the show. We have lots of fun, and we're going to have to wrap it up, guys, because it's getting late. Getting late here on the East Coast. Hope you guys had a good... Listen, you guys are doing great. Sean, thanks for joining the show. Alan has been one of my most loyal followers from nearly the beginning of the show. 3 years ago, by the way, guys, we celebrated our 3rd anniversary this year of TGI Sports Talk. This show we've been doing now for roughly two seasons. This will be our 3rd. And we've had our Sunday Stream of Consciousness now on 3 years. Are You Serious has been on a couple of years. We've been doing our interview shows for the last 3 years. So, and my vlogs have disappeared a little bit because I vent a lot of my frustrations during the shows, and I don't really seem to have anything new to talk about in a short vlog. But we'll start doing some more. And I appreciate you guys. You guys coming out and supporting the show and participating in this show. What makes it fun for me. The Sunday show is like that. This show gets to be like that more so once we get some games. But I appreciate you guys more than you know. The last 3 years have been a rocket for me, and I love it. And please, do me a favor. Go to your Facebook page. Go to the TGI Sports Talk page. Click the 3 buttons. Invite all your friends. Don't do it all at once or you get blocked by Facebook. That's how you can repay me for the fun that we had here, letting you guys argue with me. Sometimes you're right, sometimes I'm wrong. Alrighty, guys, thanks. Sean, thanks for coming in. Have a blast with you tonight. John DeLong, thank you. Rick, if you can still hear me, thank you. Anthony, if you're with us, thank you. Carlos, who else is with us? I lost my music. I lost everything. Long goodbye tonight. Anybody, if I forgot somebody, I apologize. Keith Engel, TGI Sports Talks College Football Huddle. And thanks to Lary Sorensen for coming on today, too, from Wake Forest University's broadcast team. We'll see you guys next Wednesday night. We're getting closer to real football.